we need to thank. As long as you're already putting your hands together, let's put our hands together for the boosters, because we could not put this together without them. Right? And let's thank the tech crew that keep all the tech stuff working, the lights and the sound. Yay. And then lastly, we could not do this if we did not have an amazing student body. So a big thank you to you for being such a good audience every year for 28 years. 29 now. All right, the next person you're going to see is Sierra DeMulder. Sierra is a poet and a podcast host. Her poems include deeply powerful imagery, as I'm sure you're going to see, and that has garnered her some international recognition. She is a 2-time National Poetry Slam champion and a 5-time published author. Sierra is also the co-host of the popular podcast Just Break Up, which offers relationship advice to listeners. You can check it out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's been downloaded over 4 million times, which is amazing. And her next novel is coming out very soon. Please put your hands together for Sierra DeMulder.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be back here. I know that I am a new face for all of you, but I think this is like my 8th time performing at Writers Week. I took a couple years off to start a podcast and have a baby, and now I'm back. I know. So I'm going to read mostly from my new book, which is the 5th book in this slide here. Yes. How many people here believe in reincarnation? Just starting it off really weird. Yeah, okay, a couple people over here. Yeah. How many people here are like, what is reincarnation? Everybody knows exactly what that is. Okay, so it's like past lives. You get reincarnated into like a bee or a cow or something. And how many people here don't believe in that? Excellent. How many people here have arms? Excellent. Great participation score. Okay, so the first poem is about that idea. Like, I don't actually know if I believe in reincarnation. I think it's a really interesting idea, or like an interesting metaphor that you could actually like show up and try again, or get another opportunity to do something differently, or maybe your purpose here is to get it right this time so the next person down the line doesn't have to like suffer quite so much. So with that in mind, this is called Sacral Chakra. The woman told me over voice memos how she cleared my sacral chakra of a trauma of a past life. The womb carries, she said, and we are all heavy with outdated fashions of ourselves. I do not know what I believe. My mother has a reoccurring dream. She is trapped in a dark human space, dank with the smell of urine, death. One small window cracked too high to reach. She believes this is a memory from her life, but not the one she's living. Once, a woman in Britain wrote 70 pages of hieroglyphics in her sleep, detailing her past life as a priestess, and I don't write in a diary because I am afraid of myself. The womb carries, and I wonder what collections it has by now. Carbon footprints, baby teeth, spools of fear in every color, broken dishes and white lilies, all that we are, curated in some illogical museum, all that we are, sifted and passed on in the haze of tracing paper, the ghost of an ink smudge. So says the 2-year-old with an uncanny knowledge of World War II aircrafts, who has nightmares of planes crashing into the Pacific. If I am a remake, and this life the after image of an after image of a soul, new as the first word, tell her I am attempting to free us. Tell her I am attempting poorly and stubbornly to try to let go. If not for us, then for the next passenger. Tell her I am afraid, but I am trying anyway, because what more can we ask of ourselves now and then but to race over and over imperfectly against time, disease, famine, heartbreak, freak acts of humanity and nature, only to wake up back at the starting line, salvaged and full of hope. Thank you. All right. So just quick, brief summary of my career, you heard that I am a 2-time National Poetry Slam champion and a 5-time published author. I didn't plan on being a writer. I didn't definitely plan on being a professional poet. I didn't think that was a possibility. But basically from the age of 24 to now, I'm 36, I have been spending my professional life touring as a performing poet across the world. It has brought me to Mexico, Australia, Germany, Austria, England, and it's been very amazing. I didn't mean to do this. I sort of followed this career serendipitously, sort of like the songwriter Elizabeth said, you just find something that you love and you pursue it, like Wile E. Coyote running off of that cliff. I feel like I haven't looked down quite yet. This next book that I came out with, though, like that first book, that The Bones Below, I published when I was like 23. It's a lot of angst. And this final book, it's about what's been going on in my life recently. I write a lot about my experiences. I write a lot about my family, love, all those things like that. And before I continue with poems, I took a break from poetry, like I said, to start this podcast because I think I'm really deeply interested in human relationships. I think that's what draws me to poetry because I feel like people are drawn to songwriting, lyricism, poetry, hip hop, novels because we like stories. We want to see ourselves in other people, in other stories. We want to feel like less alone we don't want to feel so uniquely messed up all the time, right? So I made this podcast, Just Break Up. It's a relationship advice podcast. We have about 10,000 weekly listeners. So if you want to check that out, it's on Spotify and Apple and whatnot. So this book is coming out in the spring. And this is the first poem in the book. I cover a lot of topics in it, and one of the topics there's 4 sections. In the first section, it predominantly covers my grandmother's death. And I had like a very life-altering experience where I helped take care of her during hospice care. And hospice care, if you don't know, is when somebody is terminally ill and they can't do anything to rectify that or make it better. So you just try to make somebody as comfortable as possible. So this is a poem about that. While my grandmother waits for death in the other room, her lips cracked as brown sugar, her fingers moving in sleep against the buttons of her nightgown, the women in my family play cards. They forget to eat, cry about past lovers, sort bills and outdated subscriptions. They sit on the floor, taking turns massaging out the grief and answering worried calls from friends, clergy, neighbors who sloppily soak this phone with their regret. I should have called earlier, but the holidays, you know. There is a camaraderie among women and death. Both know how to become a vigil, to be both busy and still, an usher from one room to the next. One sister drove through the night. One daughter wore the same clothes for a week. I was wrong. My grandmother isn't waiting for death, instead drifting in and out of a much softer word. It is the living who wait, who count the hours, the morphine doses, the last requests for ice chips. Yes, it is the living who wait, with the card games and their tears and their own hushed regrets from all the times they had nothing to wait for. Thanks. Okay, so I am a part of the LGBTQIA community. Thank you. That is not something they used to cheer for when I was in high school. Ha ha ha, homophobia, trauma laugh. You know, I'll just laugh at that joke because it was hilarious. So I'm bisexual, and so for a long time I would write poems and I would like hide the pronouns. You know, I would be like, you are the love of my life. Ambiguous person who could be a man or a woman or otherwise. And this is a poem about my first lady crush in high school. My high school boyfriend, my high school sweetheart, we dated, we broke up, it was tragic. You all will probably break up with your significant other. Is that bad to say? But it just happens. You listen to my relationship advice podcast. Anyway, so I was like dating this boy. We broke up and we became friends like you do, which is a terrible idea. And I told him, I was like, I think I have a crush on this girl, Caitlin, when we were friends. And he was like, oh, cool. I think I'm cool with that. And then like a week later, he started dating her, which I feel like, that's what I'm saying, right? Like that was like an intentional move, right? Essentially a hate crime. Just kidding. That's not a hate crime. That's a joke. Okay, so this is a poem about that. How to change the pronouns in your love poems. You are 18 and drunk for the first time in the bed of a pickup truck next to a girl you call your best friend, but whose mouth you love to watch move. You are cloudy from swigs of cheap vodka passed around a hormonal fire in the middle of a field, because that's where parties happen, in the middle of upstate nowhere. You spent the night dancing with her, giggling like arias and squatting to piss together in the outskirts of light until the world started to twist, so the two of you crawled into the truck bed. Somehow, in the haze of liquor and wood smoke, you find her hand, and you fall asleep watching the stars blur together, wondering if she will remember any of this tomorrow. Days later, when she starts to dating your ex, the first boy who ever loved you, you will glimpse them holding hands on Main Street, fully awake, in daylight where everyone can see, and you will feel like a shipwreck wash ashore inside you. You will tell everyone you are jealous. You will lie and say of her. Thanks. I'm gonna walk over here. Is that okay with this? Okay, so I was a big nerd, and I put a poem on my set list that I thought it would behoove you to be able to see. This poem is called I Asked Why You Have Denied Yourself Love. And it says, answers crowdsourced from the author's Instagram. Italics denote direct quote. So I threw an ask box in my Instagram stories and was like, why don't you love yourself? And I got like 300 responses from my followers. And what was so interesting about it is like how diverse the answers were. At times, like, you know, one person would be like, because I have debt, and the other person would be like, because my dad called me ugly, and one person would be like, because I don't think I deserve it yet, and another person will be like, because I have big feet, or something like that. And also, it was incredibly common. There was like so much universality in it, and I think it's interesting to see from an outsider perspective how trivial some of these things are, like how silly it is to not like actually like yourself because of a physical body part that you can't control or something like that. So this is, like I said, I asked why you have denied yourself love, and everything in italics is a direct quote. Absent parents and the man who made me mistrust every man after. I haven't earned it yet. What is love if not a salary, the sweet treat we get for being demure? It feels too selfish, too vulgar, unladylike to gorge myself on the moist cake of it. I've got bad credit, a prettier sibling, a rank history of mistakes, each one more foul than the last. The timing was all wrong. The timing was right, but I was afraid of losing it. I am disorganized. My brain is broken, but it was stuck on something I thought was love. I've spit it out before just to prove that I can. I believe I am ugly, and in the end, it is just easier this way. Familiar as a callus, tongued over like a cracked tooth, suffering feels cleaner. Because if I start to believe I actually deserve love, I have to find unacceptable all those incapable of giving it. Thanks. Okay, so I was one of those people who got married during the pandemic. Yeah, a little clapping, married, sure. My my now wife and I, we used to work together when we were 20 and 24 at a coffee shop. We dated. I was a hot mess. I wanted to kiss everything. She dumped me. And then I thought about her for like 12 years. I moved on with my life. I moved to Minnesota. She lived in New York. But I thought about her. She like haunted me. And then we reconnected, and this is a poem about that, and it's called Now and Again. Today, while you were at work, I sat at your kitchen table and imagined feeding you dinner. It's a game I play. Paint a portrait of a family with no water or brushes, just strokes of the eye and mind. I'm still shocked I get to love you again. Your face, the locket I wore until the patina left a green smudge between my breasts. I measure our time apart, not in days, but in two presidents, a birth, a lanyard of funerals, bodies swallowed by dirt or rolled like bread into an incinerator. The day you dislocated your collarbone in Boston, I paid a stranger in Minneapolis to drag ink-soaked needles across my body. The day you closed on your house, I latticed my first pie crust 1,200 miles away. We almost forgot each other. I fall asleep on your chest now, again. Its familiar drum, a mother's singing heard for the first time outside the womb. I love how your body shows me I was gone. The shy cackle of crow's feet, that new scar, the garland of grays haloing your forehead, crocuses sprung from a winter without me. Okay, so going back to my grandmother for a second, that experience was like very humbling. You know, as you move through life, you're gonna be able to mark the experiences in life in which you say, oh, I'm different than I was before this happened. And her passing and taking care of her and seeing the human body die really changed something in me. I'm going to read two poems back to back. The first poem is about a time in which her pain medication basically was failing. You know, if you think about it, the human body, when we talk about death, we like to talk about it in very clean, peaceful ways, because I think we don't like to talk, I think because we're scared of it. And it's okay to be scared of it, but it is inevitable for everyone. That is a bummer to say, but this poem is basically about, you know, watching her go from struggling and then to like a very peaceful moment a couple days before she died. If anybody is a fan of poetry, the poet Mary Oliver, who is a very well-known modern poet, she passed away just a day before my grandmother did, and like 4 days before my grandmother passed, I was up in the night shift taking care of her, and at 3 a.m, I read her Mary Oliver poems until she fell asleep, and that's the second poem. So I'm just gonna read these back to back. My grandmother moans in pain like a woman in labor, except the woman is sick, so the wails are less like a siren and more like a reticent opening of an old door. She gestures at her side for the 100th time. Here is where it hurts, and we can do nothing but tell her again and again that the morphine will work soon. We are the rich dropping lint into the open, wanting hands of the needy, throwing brine into the ocean, her organs loud in the room, workers who have done but one job their whole lives only to be laid off, her bleating, the sound I imagine trees make when cut for lumber. It seems no amount of narcotic can catch up to the pain. Hour after hour we hover, 5 women with useless hands trying to siphon poison from a snake bite, but the whole body is a wound. The whole world becomes my grandmother's wailing, and we can do nothing but swear and pace and rub her forehead and chest and arms and allow her to squeeze the hurt into us, knowing all the while that if she were an animal or even the worst of criminals, she would never have to suffer like this. Hours before dawn, I read Mary Oliver poems to my grandmother, my feet propped on the childlike railing of her hospice bed, my thighs turned to pin cushions, until my voice is hoarse, not nearly as dry as the graying woman beside me, being taken slowly, not by cancer, though it has been cruel, but by the steady hardening of dehydration. I read about black bears sticky with honey and roses, their expanding faces unfurrowed by such frivolities like fear or importance. I must tell you, every poem is about death when you are reading to the dying. Even common words shrug off their working clothes to reveal their true evening desires. Occasionally, my grandmother raises a spotted hand and asks me to repeat a line, as though it were a sunrise or a candy she wished to savor for just a bit longer. Mary Oliver once wrote 3 poems about her dying friend, but they were really more about what particles on earth are shifted or repurposed when that soul is called home. Do we just stop, like the hard click of a cassette player, or do we close our eyes for a moment only to open to new scenery, a new but familiar form, like a mama fox and one of her kits, or a snowdrift yawning over a field? Her eyes are closing now, so I soften my voice to water. Her breath slows, deepens, a stream becoming a river, my final words barely a whisper. Without opening her eyes, my grandmother says, "You're drifting away," or maybe I am. I think it's both of us, I say, and then her sleep is real. Thanks. Okay. Just something a little bit lighter. I wrote this poem for my friend's wedding. Yay, love. Something that they were inspired by in their relationship was the idea of Halley's Comet. Halley's Comet comes around once every 42 years. So if you're incredibly lucky, you'll get to see it twice. So this is called 42 Years. In 42 years, when Halley's Comet returns to dance around the earth once more, and we now pass the time complaining about too loud music or too little social security, and the years we spent mothering chickens, babies, dogs have been long replaced by water aerobics, when our joints creak and sigh like old rocking chairs, and our skin wrinkled into a topographical map, each vein a river, each age spot a summit of a mountain I have kissed or climbed, when our bodies are no longer inciting that lust-filled hunger, but instead the feeling of being full, being home, when our days thin like dough rolled under our fingers and the blush of our youth has been called home for supper, when we are old, not just in years but in newness, when there is nothing more we can find out about each other, together so long I could paint your face in the dark, recite from memory the way your breath untangles itself from the day as you sleep, in 42 years, when Halley's Comet comes again to yawn her coy song over our backyard, I will take your hand, lean into your sagging neck, and whisper, "I told you so. I told you I would love you this long." But if by some cruel cackle of the universe I am not there to squeeze your hand, if the earth takes me before the sky has a chance to prove me right, my darling, I'll still love you when I am bones, when I am air, when I am made only of stars. Thanks. Okay. All right, we're going to take a pause from the new book and do a couple old poems. I'm sorry, I know that there were a couple requests to do some really old work that you might have seen on YouTube, but I have promptly forgotten all of those poems. So I can't really do anything from memory right now, so I'm going to do a couple poems from this book, I think. First poem I will do, this is for my sister. My sister and I grew up in upstate New York in like a rural, tiny farming town. We were both raised by hippies. And so I tried to include a lot of imagery from our childhood in this poem. And so It talks about how my sister has, at the time, dealt with an eating disorder for over 14 years. So if that is content that you need to listen to carefully, please take care of yourself. This is called Gardener's Daughter, and it's from Today Means Amen. Blackberry briar, hunter's daughter, ocean-eyed mermaid. When my sister needs to talk, I extend my arms towards her like a child asking to be held. I turn my palms upward as if donating blood and let her empty the contents of her day on me. Her words file out, orderly at first, and then a swarm, spilling over me like the soft swell of a mushroom cloud until I do not remember where I begin and her need ends. Once, I held a newborn baby in my arms. 3 weeks old, naked as truth comes, she felt so small. Her heartbeat a moth I trapped between my palms. This is how to love the healing. If my sister's eating disorder were a person, it would be a teenager by now. I imagine it. Doorknobs for knees, long, graceful fingers like the legs of ballerinas, the beaks of cranes. It would have a favorite book, a lacquer combination, a best friend, her. I tell her I won't let her live in my house if she lets it sleep over. I tell her I can't see it, but I know it's there. I tell her nothing. And just let the cloud of her day rise like dough, milkweed woman, catacomb breast. This is how to love the healing. To be both the sound, to be not the sound, but the receptacle. To be not the therapist, but the stop after. To be not the paint, not the blank canvas, not even the sweat of creativity, but to be the bed the artist crawls back to. Tonight, I rub my sister's shoulders. My thumbs mistake her back for the staircase in our childhood home. She tells me that she is scared, that the waves are rising and the ship is begging to become driftwood. The hounds are howling tonight and the moon is so full it could burst. She tells me that she has been symptom-free for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, it feels so small. A newborn, a whisper, a fluttering of smothered wings. But sister, this is what it's like to heal, to get up again and again after the waves come, to retrain the hounds of your body. Dragonfly, child of stone and moss, you are dancing this dance you know by heart. You are crawling out from under yourself, spring drinker, sap collector. You are drawing a map to forgiveness, where you live, where you already are, you just don't know it yet. Perfect isn't where we're from, and we wouldn't like it there anyway. Big sister, little dipper, who taught me how to sing the way light streams through a window, how to live boldly and without shame. Sister, when we were little, I didn't know what it was like to face the dark, twisting woods behind our house alone. Sweet sapling falcon of a woman, when I think of what courage is, I see your hand reaching back for me, leading me into the forest, into the unknown, the seam of your shoulder, the horizon of your voice saying, look, I've got you, I'm here. Blackberry briar, gardener's daughter, you were born to walk through this. You were born to travel that long journey into yourself. Now look into the distance. I'm there if you need me, arms out, ready to listen, ready to sing. Sweet sister, I've got you. I'm here. Thanks. Okay, so sad thing incoming. Well, not necessarily. So my wife and I had a hard time getting pregnant, not just because it doesn't work that way. The first time I was pregnant, it ended up being what's called an ectopic pregnancy, which is a pregnancy where the embryo implants in your fallopian tube, and it is deadly. Can be deadly to the mother, but the embryo will no longer be able to sustain there. We didn't know until I had to go to the emergency room, and they took out a liter of blood from my abdomen and my fallopian tube and the subsequent pregnancy. So it was very traumatic and sad to deal with. And so I wrote a handful of poems about it in this new book. And so I'm going to read a couple of them now. I'm going to read 2 back to back. As she tapped the needle into the ridge of my ear, the acupuncturist told me how surgery can trap cold in the body, the warmest, most quiet parts of ourselves made loud under the fluorescent of the operating room. I don't feel cold as much as I feel opened, as though I lost not just an organ, but a bet with some faceless collector. I am a purse turned inside out. I am a mural tagged overnight, something made more and less of itself. I don't feel like I lost a baby, I tell anyone who isn't scared of my grief, just the dream of one, as if that is somehow easier to bury, unheld, unnamed, just the foolish hope of you and the audacity of my joy spilling everywhere like that. We're having a baby, she says, and you swore you would never be like them. The women on the blogs and the message boards who talk about skipping their own sister's baby shower or canceling plans with friends who only know how to talk about their kids, or the one woman who confessed to screaming at the drugstore cashier who was handing out roses on Mother's Day. No, I'll never be like them, you thought, until you found yourself sitting across the table from a beaming couple. And you cough your congratulations, flimsy as gauze, and you mean it, of course, you mean it. But you thought you'd never be that woman, jealous as a toddler, made stingy by grief. Tell the readers it was you at the drugstore who saw that bucket of roses, individually wrapped like syringes, 100 tiny dancers blushing proud at the first recital. And it's not true, is it? You didn't scream after all. And that, too, is a part of your story, the silence of it, being offered something blooming and saying, no, not me, not yet. Thanks. Okay, just a couple more, and then we're going to do some Q&A. Okay. So, but we did get pregnant, and I have a beautiful 10-month-old baby today, 10 months old today. Thank you. I really had to stop myself from, I know you guys are cheering for a baby, and you're like, yes, cool, but I had to stop myself from putting her picture in my PowerPoint. So I'm sorry that I didn't. She's very cute. You can see her on my Instagram. So before I announced my pregnancy to the world and to the podcast listeners and stuff like that, I had this my wife and I were so excited. We were so happy. We felt incredibly fragile because we had this loss, and we had lots of other loss in our life. But we were feeling, excited and nervous and so joyful that, it made me rethink a lot of things in my life. And this is called New Vows. When my best friend got married, he walked down the aisle to a song about death. Isn't that what marriage is all about? He laughed, a promise that you will be together until one of you dies. I regret my wedding vows. Too focused on the benign, our boundless laughter, how I cherished just waking up with you. I should have said, I take thee and all the treachery that aliveness guarantees. I should have said, I will help bury your elders. I take your hand and your heart murmur, the cancerous growth above your father's ear. I take your family's history of alcoholism and give you back a possible covenant of dementia, miscarriage, high blood pressure, in sickness and in car accidents, in sickness and in the mundane, shared calendars and anniversaries spent arguing about our budget. You told me once that Great Danes have a short life expectancy, only 6 to 10 years if you're lucky, and I cried. Who would sign up to love something so impermanent? Oh, beloved, we have been so happy lately, it's making us nervous. And isn't that what marriage is all about? A love so darling, so hallowed and exposed, we both volunteer to be its keeper when the joy runs dry, when the body fails, not because, but in glorious spite of the unpalatable, impossible fact that someday one of us will wake up first, only to find ourselves alone. Okay. Another old poem. is anybody else having like a very hard year? Cool. Just a couple of us, but yes, thank you. You also believe in reincarnation. Thank you. This is for you too. All right. If you were to ask the world, which is to say the internet, what self-care looks like, it would tell you candles. Hundreds of candles stationed around your bathtub like a winking flower crown, flickering in the corner of your perfectly angled Instagram photo captioned #MeTime. It would tell you it's sipping tea, not coffee, in the color-coordinated mug at dawn, or doing yoga outside at dawn, or writing gratitude lists outside at dawn, or even knowing what the heck dawn looks like. It would tell you it's drinking your weight in water. It's buying a new set of nice sheets, a gym membership. It costs money. It doesn't spill or stain or fray. It would tell you nothing about how hard you have to cry to break a blood vessel, or what it's like to order takeout again, a whole pizza you can't afford to eat alone in your bed like a slow eclipse, the box in your bed, your body always in bed, not a grave, but somehow still a burial. What it's like to choose between paying for a cell phone bill or your water bill, knowing you drown yourself in both, endlessly scrolling, soaking up 1,000 lives before you even get up in the morning. What it's like to be so lonely you dream in sitcom characters, fantasize to the thought of your ex, the one who treated you so poorly you might as well let him screw you over one last time. Do a quick Google search of how trendy healing looks these days. Thousands of shareable images of well-curated mantras pasted over a postcard of the Rocky Mountains. I am enough. The truth is, I look nothing like this. The truth is, sometimes self-care is wanting to text the person who hurt you, but instead letting your phone die. Sometimes it's showering without sitting down in the tub. Sometimes it's falling asleep in the afternoon and waking to a lake of blackness, speaking to no one for days. Sometimes it's making it to the job you hate on time because you have to, because you've got bills to pay and your boss doesn't care if you need to #center yourself. These days, self-care seems to come with a price tag and a filter. Healing is rarely so photogenic, nor is it one size fits all. And I know, as a poet, I'll have to pay some sort of poetic severance tax for how cliche that line is, but I'm sick of prioritizing what's pretty over what's true, which is to say, it's been a hard year. Which is to say, I hid myself from you because I was afraid the mess would disgust you. Which is to say, this spring, I let the lawn grow long. I let the sun forget me. I ate that whole damn pizza by myself. I went for walks, cried the whole time, took a picture of nothing. I found the box cutter again, renamed it an organ, a cancer, starved the desire to die from my body, let the laundry stay swallowed in the hamper, watched dust paint the coffee table, ignored the dishes in the sink, and I need you to know there was mold. None of it was pretty. Healing is a baby's first word. No one really taught them what to say. They just picked it up as they went along, and whatever we do, however we get to that next day, that is just as valid as the glittery veneer we've been taught to hide under. I did buy candles, though, from Target. The ones picked over and half off that smell like pine and cinnamon and a chemically engineered ocean. And isn't that self-care? Giving yourself permission to believe in seasons? Okay, my bad. I have terrible time management. Hey, so I'm going to take a couple questions really quickly now because we have like 3 minutes, right? And this is my new book. It's coming out June 6th, but if you pre-order right now, you will probably get it in April in the mail. You can pre-order a signed copy from me, or a not signed copy. It's $18 and $25. I also have those 4 other books. You can listen to a free spoken word album of me on Spotify. You can also listen to my podcast, Just Break Up Pod, over there. Yes. Her name is Temple. I heard you ask another person that, and I'm going to just say, like, a good time. Anybody else? Yes. Yes, oh my God, she just turned 16. My niece, their poem, it's like an eight-year-old or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, she turned 16. Wild time moving. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes, cool. I'm sorry, yes. In the third book, let's see. What is my third book? Oh, it's actually an anatomy. It's like an anatomical drawing of a shoulder. If you turn the book on its side, it is a shoulder socket. Anybody else have any other questions about being a poet or a writer or anything like that? Cool, I'm going to put this back here. You can come and say hi if you want. Please pre-order my book, or you can follow me on Instagram. I'm not really anywhere else. Thank you so much, Fremd.